I've got them. Oh, crikey, where's that?
Thank you, everyone. We just finished opportunity 4, and we're moving on to opportunity 5. The after lunch session. I think we're well on the way through, so we'll just pick up on where we finished.
So this is into the, I guess, business type matters. So this includes the CIAL request for the key that one. Key 10s. Other questions around centres. So
Yes.
the recommendations were to add acknowledge Prebbleton basically is one of the locally important urban centres.
And that's come in on the revised mapping, I think.
Yep.
That's 2 and 14. And Prebbleton is now an orange dot, locally important urban centre in towns.
Oh, yeah.
And it wasn't previously.
Major town. No.
Locally
Locally
important.
important urban centre in town.
Plus some recommendations around how the port's shown.
Yes, I remember those.
Including the additional recommendation to add it to various other maps.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
And those maps, just Liz, you and I will just need to double check all those once we get the mapping from the officer team. Right, we comfortable with those amendments?
Yes. Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Right. So recognising the role of research and primary production activities. So recommendations here that relate to adding in some text around tertiary and research institutions.
Yes.
Including farms, and then this new direction. About urban growth occurring in locations that do not compromise the ability of primary production activities to expand or change.
Yeah.
Adding in some explanations around that.
Those explanations actually occur because I'm looking at, it must be a page.
So 77, I think, of the officers.
Second version.
77.
Okay, there we go. Yes, great.
So it's a new direction, and
Yes.
this is the associated
Yeah.
text associated with it.
Yeah.
In fact, there's 2 directions. So one's around
two
not
directions.
compromising primary production, and the other's around protecting institutions, which is that second.
Mm-hmm. Excellent.
It's certainly a pretty strategic element for the Greater Christchurch area, isn't it? So I think when I read these through, I was comfortable with those.
It was about this. This is where we talked about the reverse sensitivity, isn't it?
Yes. About whether
from
there
what
was.
from what I'm reading is that the sensitivity here is that it's effectively placing some restrictions on urban growth, isn't it? That's the general gist of what's happening here. Because at the time there was some concern that which comes first? Is the urban in place and then a primary productive activity that starts to creep towards the urban environment, and then there's reverse sensitivity issues.
Yes.
So is that clear that at some point there would need to be a buffer, if you like, between the growth? It's saying here on that bottom paragraph.
We're looking at that starting primary production.
Yeah, there is a need for primary production to be able to expand or change, but really, you don't want them expanding or changing to cause issues with an established urban environment, because then you get reverse sensitivity issue.
Doesn't the previous paragraph deal with that, Grant?
Positive bringing new people to managing adverse effects of urban growth, which need to be managed. Yeah, I suppose that, however, there are also adverse effects.
So it cuts both ways.
Yeah.
I have a
Is that sufficient?
I own and run a vineyard and a cropping block in Hawke's Bay, and the area that I'm in, people love living out there on the little blocks. And then they complain when the bird bangers go off. So there's that issue. And then if you have a lot of urban growth, planned urban growth coming in, it affects that. But also more intense rural production causes problems for established urban areas.
Yeah.
So it's a balance. I feel myself that we've got it reasonably well captured.
And any further elaboration on that would be the regional policy statement, which might provide rules
That manages
distance setbacks.
setback and district plans, particularly too,
Yeah.
in terms of their zoning patterns.
Okay.
Those are the practical methods to follow through on this.
Right. Yep. Okay. I'm okay.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? We are in agreement, panel. Thank you.
Same with the next one. So this is more specifically about the tertiary
Yes.
institutes.
Really
Same
is
sort of
a
thing, really.
hub
Yeah.
for tertiary research institutes in the Greater Christchurch area. So very appropriate in my mind that this new direction comes in. Are we happy with the wording?
So wasn't the issue here for the tertiary institutions twofold? One was about the need for greater connectivity with the improved public transport routes. The second part about it was ensure that we're protecting and enabling them for future growth.
Yes.
And have we captured both of those? I can see that we've captured the transport one, but have we captured the future growth and expansion aspect of the tertiary institutions?
If you look at that last paragraph, I think so, because it says they need to be provided for
And protected.
and protected as they're providing for the skilled workers. So I think it's that double-edged thing of
Okay.
you need to protect particularly the research institutes from urban growth that might compromise them, but you also need to provide for their growth as well.
But also the middle sentence of paragraph 2 there, Victoria, have a read of that.
Oh, maybe impact by
Goodness.
urban growth. Yeah.
Grant.
I suppose it doesn't stop a tertiary institute per se to expand itself in terms of providing accommodation for those
Yeah.
staff as well as students
Mm.
in a campus situation. So they're not prohibiting that. But basically, it's protecting the institute, but it
Recognising.
also can facilitate the institute's business.
Because we know already that their student accommodations are at a premium. They're all oversubscribed at the moment.
Yeah.
Both
Nephews
Lincoln and
starting to get in.
UC.
Yeah.
So I think it's reasonable to anticipate that at some stage there'll be more of those intense housing around those areas, and none of them are in the key transport spine. So the key thing is that we're not preventing them from expanding in that way if they choose to.
Yep. Happy?
Yep.
Yep.
Thank you.
So this is just picking up some additional key terms that were sought, and officers not making any recommendations.
Those terms are well defined in other documents, aren't they?
Mm.
Apart from perhaps freight network. But does anyone feel we need to define those terms? They the best words to use in these policy and plan documents are ones that stand on their own right. So I think we all understand what infrastructure means, what renewable energy means, what a freight network is. On that basis, I think we agree with the officer's recommendation.
Yeah.
Opportunity 6. Transport. So the first topic is about alternative options or approaches for MRT. So the spatial plan provides the proposed route and the urban form that corresponds with that, but the detailed analysis of the MRT sits as a separate
Yes.
work stream.
There's been an IBC indicative business case that's looked at 9 mode options in that list there. And as we heard in that paragraph there that's coming up, most common was a suggestion to use existing heavy rail network. The officers are saying this is not well aligned for a number of reasons. It does not go through the central city. Either have a new central station, would require a tunnel or a trench. Current rail infrastructure limits the number of trains it can operate. Single tracking. So you can only go one direction at a time. Existing rail lines are already busy. Critical and growing task of moving freight. The high freight demand between Rolleston and Little Port. So existing rail lines are not where most people are now, or where they will live, work, play in the future. So that last comment there, that they're not, or not where most people are now, or where they will live, work, play in the future, is that strictly correct?
I would say that the peninsula is a play area for Christchurch. And it's got that rail link that goes through to Littleton.
Yeah, it's near Rolleston, near Rangiora, or
The bus won't take your boat.
I don't think that, I'm thinking of the railway line that passes through Christchurch from Papanui through to Hagley Park virtually.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people. I've got some friends who live in Fendleton who back onto the railway line on fairly expensive properties. So it's not necessarily where they won't, given the right conditions, people could live close to railway lines. The issue there, I suppose, is the existing railway line and the rail corridor idea that we talked about of ensuring that spatially, perhaps, if it was able to take a double track, what would that mean?
Well, are we really? I sense from the questions and answers and the submissions that the panel is interested in, given the time frame, 30 years and then 700,000 or a million people in the future, not letting go of the opportunity of the rail network as being somewhere that could move people in the future. It's quite a strategic asset that should at least be protected in terms of current designation and maybe strategically enhanced.
Yes.
And I think that question we asked when we came, it was through Victoria when she asked about what the other agencies were doing with rail, and we've got the reply that Regional Land Transport Committee or ECAN's definitely thinking ahead and looking ahead. But if that's the case, I think we could just make one or two quite careful wording recognitions, plus on the main transport maps, there might be something we can do just to recognise that it's there and it's in the future. It could well come into play in 20, 30, 50 years. Is that what the panel's thinking?
My view is about that last question about, or last paragraph about the rail corridors. I don't agree, because, you don't have to go far in Wellington to see that all the development is happening and is being encouraged on the rail corridor.
I think it was, I think it was partly, and I think it's probably not consistent along the rail corridor, but I remember that Mark Stevenson from the council noted that in a lot of places it's in an industrial area. So and that's not true of the whole line, but those are not areas where it's expected that people you'd increase the intensity of people living in those areas because they have that specific function. I think it might be talking more about that type of thing.
Tracy, you had some thoughts?
When the discussion came up, there was a thought in terms of the panel and its part of its report, separate to report, actually encouraging the partnership to continue to factor in through the Regional Land Transport Committee, but also where the Mayoral Forum are considering that as well. And I take issue that from what you've heard from submitters, you'd encourage that work to continue.
Because for where I sit, I mean, these just look like a whole lot of things as to why we can't do it, and none of them are insurmountable. The double track thing, and it's just throwing everything back at us. And taking what one of the submitters, actually a couple of submitters I think have talked about, is like from the Rolleston context, the MRT is going to go to Hornby. It's not that out of the way to think that could go along the heavy rail line and then onto the MRT network. It doesn't even sound like they've looked at things like that, but we don't know properly what they've looked at. But when we're looking as far as into the future that we're talking about, we should really be having everything on the table. I mean, the rail line exists where it is now.
And I agree with that. I think if you look at an intergenerational type of viewpoint, you need to be able to leave it for maybe 10 years from now, being able to make that decision. That would be my view on that. It'll be I don't think it's a good idea to get rid of the whole option.
No,
whole idea.
Yeah.
no.
So I just wonder if spatially, what the panel might be wanting to achieve is that a protection of what's there,
Yes,
which I guess is the question,
yes,
within the encouragement based on what you've been submitted for those other forums to continue
Yes.
looking at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's where like the regional transport committee can advocate to the government, central government, to try and get double tracking and doing
Yeah.
stuff like that.
I think this. I think it's more than it depends on the timeframes. It's such an opportunity to retain the existing one, but not lose the opportunity to allow in the future urban intensification, especially around perhaps nodes along the railway line that are connecting to other modes of transport in buses or whatever. But in which case, I think we do need to actually secure the idea of a double tracking. But I mean, that's, and what the implications are for that, because if you don't do that and flag it in some sort of document strategically, and somebody comes and builds some really expensive property activity right close to prevent the double tracking, then you've got issues.
Yeah. Yeah.
all right, so there's 3 opportunities, I think, 4 opportunities we have. We've got the one that Tracy mentioned about having it as a side recommendation that doesn't appear in the spatial plan, but as a recommendation for us, the partnership, to encourage the work that's going on and recognise the transport group is underway. We could actually put in the called the joint work program, some particular reference to it, because at the moment, look at page 84 of our document that we're using, the second variation from the staff. The action reads Greater Christchurch Transport Plan, which I think is what we're talking about, isn't it? Including mass rapid transport. And then you could look at the purpose, which must include rail, because encouraging mode shift, reducing vehicle kilometres, transport emissions. There's nothing stopping rail being looked at. So we could actually make some more specific reference there. We could look at Plan 15, MAP 15. Currently has, I was talking to Grant about this earlier, that for me, it seems that the current rail network's just there as a geographical reality. This is where it is, rather than highlighting it for any future potential. So we could tweak that as brackets future potential, something like that. And then if we decided those last 2 opportunities, 2 and 3, then we could tweak the words to, we could recommend some tweak to the words, which Liz and I could work on around about those actions.
Yeah, I think it's important. I mean, it's urban growth around potential nodes interacting with both MRT. So there's a nodal thing to start with, but there's also the undeveloped bit is the connections, the future connections with Rangiora and Rolleston. And we, whether that's on road with buses, or what is the logistics of having those connections on heavy rail.
Yes.
And those investigations will be done if we got the partnership to and the regional transport stuff to actually look at that.
Look, I've got my own experience that Kate has as well, living and working around the Hutt Valley, the Wellington rail network. Certainly when I first left university, I lived in the Western Hills in Hutt Valley, and drove my little bomb down at Melling Station, which was about probably a 3 or 4 kilometre drive. There was a park there, and I jumped on the train at Melling into Wellington City. And that was the best way of getting into town, because didn't have to find parking. There was a big park at Melling Station, and all of those lower Hutt stations are the same. A lot of them are industrial areas.
Yeah.
Petone, some of the other ones
Very
you got
tighter.
tighter.
Yeah.
Um,
Especially as you go up towards Upper Hutt.
and the intensification around Lower Hutt is in and around those, because the CBD grew somewhere quite different. It was totally inaccessible to the rail network. So now the intensification is around those communities where there is a rail.
They're actually
Station.
moving Melling Station back so that you can
Further.
walk over the bridge right into the Hutt CBD.
Hutt City.
Yeah. It's allied to a big stop bank project as well, Riverlink. It's going to be
But
so
the
much better.
Yeah, but the differences you have here is that those lines were there. They've been there for
Demolished
since the
everything.
20s, 30s, 40s.
Saw it come down.
Whereas you'd have to do some more work quite a lot of work to make them realistic for commuter travel. And hence the query about how big is the designation. Is there land protected that could enable that?
Maybe that's the word.
Enable?
Enable in order to secure the double tracking for not only urban growth issues, but also general improved freight movement as well, especially if we're getting more freight coming down through the new ships.
Yeah,
that single line is a bit of an issue in some spots, but I think enabling that to happen and securing some kind of indicative. Well, I know there's that submitter who had the 1 kilometre thing, but I mean, it's just looking at predominantly the securing of a spatial track, double tracking.
I think, Tracy, the partnerships debated this a lot, I know. So
and I know, so the regional committee and lots of forum, but I absolutely hear, and I think it's again around those words that seek to say what you spatially want to do is protect what we've got and not inadvertently cut off any future options.
Yeah.
So I think we can reflect that in there.
Kathy, could we just type that in? Just who's doing the typing?
Right.
Okay, so can we just repeat that just under opportunities? Maybe just another
secure that railway corridor, not inadvertently.
So just somewhere in here.
Yeah, so protection of what is there, plus encouragement of looking at in the future, not lose opportunity.
Yes, that's already there.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So, in terms of actual, so we're not agreeing with the officers here. So we're looking at an recognition of its strategic nature and potential for enhancement.
Both urban growth and the transport network on those two issues, really.
Or enhancement. Okay. Have we got enough there for Liz and I to work on
Mm.
some suggestions?
The other word would be complement. It's complementing
Complementary,
the MRT
yeah, and integrating with,
in the network.
Yeah.
yeah, complementing. Impotent? No, sorry.
And transport network.
Yeah, that complements and integrates, I think, with. Okay, so we happy with that flavour?
Yeah.
Thanks for that. Let's move on.
So
PT.
submission seeking improved public transport services. Talking about the PT Futures business case. So don't recommend changes to the spatial plan because the PT Futures is a separate process. However, just noting in the reply, they did recommend that map 15 was amended to show the complete connection for the core public transport routes heading to Queen's Park, New Brighton and Sumner.
Yes.
So I think that was in response to the query around
Why did that
the
happen?
arrows just going,
Yeah.
just ending.
Yeah.
And remember, Ben on Thursday said that that those arrows appear on a number of
Maps.
the maps,
Oh, yeah.
and I felt we needed to be consistent.
So they're in 2 and 14 as well, for example.
Yes. So we agree with this
Yeah.
recommendation?
Yeah.
Does the PT Futures, that's not in the work program, or is that part of the overall transport?
So the transport program for Greater Christchurch links in with PT Futures
Okay.
MRT.
So is that broad transport plan, Greater Christchurch, brings it all together? Okay.
Just related to map 15. Notice there are 2 dotted blue lines with arrows going from Rangiora and Wood End. Presumably, is that going to Tuahiwi?
Sorry, Grant, which map are you on?
Map 15.
Yeah.
Page 79 of our,
Yep, I've got that open.
And
You were looking at what?
well, we're talking about the changes to the arrows on this map, but also notice there's a very thin little dotted lines with arrows, future transport links going somewhere, but
It is going to Tuahiwi because if you reconnect it back with map 2,
okay.
you can see that it goes into the area that's marked Kainga, Nohoanga, Papakainga.
So, yeah.
so that in the key, sorry, if we go back to the key on that
It's not there.
map.
I can't see it in the
Says
legend.
potential future public
Yeah,
transport. links.
Potential future
Oh,
public transport links.
Yeah, it's underneath the new and enhanced public transport routes.
Okay, and so is that the only dotted blue we have?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that same thing with the same legend pulls through into map 2.
Okay.
But with map 2, it's more obvious as to where they're going.
Where they're going.
Yeah.
Okay, happy with that?
So we're hopeful it's going to be a big growth area.
Mm.
So
Mm.
it's in the district plan at the moment.
Mm. Where we're up to now?
4.7.3, so district connections. Of frequent and reliable services. Same sort of response, not recommending changes to the draft spatial plan because that really relates to delivery of public transport futures.
Can we just go back to look at the heading of the topic, district connections? The MRT system would include further enhancements to connect to the districts as part of PT Futures. Well, this is really the core of what we heard from the youth people on that Saturday, wasn't it? Hour and a half in DUC, not very frequent. So what I've heard from the officers, PD Futures is going to grapple with that.
Yes, so PT Futures is, and that's going to be up to each of the contributing councils to consider how it interplays with their own transport networks, and also the timing and funding for that over the next 6 years. So that's live at the moment, and is getting considered part of long-term plan review and funding.
So I wonder whether we should actually just pick that up, that the panel advised that the PT Futures
Sorry, what was that? The panel
advised that the PT Futures program is actively looking at the matters described by the officers above, and are feeding into current LTP considerations.
I think it would be really useful, just as a suggestion though, because it was very clear messaging from the community and youth in terms of, I guess, for the panel encouraging consideration of those matters.
Yes.
I guess just to reinforce that.
Yes.
And youth messaging about connectedness between the districts and two learning institutions.
I couldn't agree more. That was a powerful day. But you missed it. It was incredible young people talking a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Is how I left that session. Liz, you were there too, weren't you? No, you weren't. So we heard a lot of discussion about young people, Wollaston, Rangiora, just, the weekends. Not much to do. Head into town, but there's one bus type of thing. They can't carpool because they're on restricted licenses. So
The parents are fed up with driving in and out of
that's
town.
right. So I've certainly got that very clear in my mind, and I'd like to make, if the panel's happy, quite a strong reach out on this and recognise what an incredible coup it was it was a lot of hard work to organise those youth submissions.
So maybe the messaging needs to be about prioritising this, because the PT Futures program is quite broad and it will be over a very long period of time. So maybe it's about encouraging prioritisation to consider these routes. Just a suggestion.
It was really, it was basically teenagers on the weekends and getting to sport,
But it was also UC. I mean, you think
getting
of
to
that
UC.
young fella.
Yeah.
We can't get accommodation because he's local,
Yes.
but it's going to take him, he's going to have to drive
Has
his
to live-
vehicle in
has to
every
live at
day.
home,
Get
can't
to
get into the
uni, yeah.
halls.
Yeah.
Is it a case of saying that, like the panel doesn't disagree with what you heard from people? It's more that it's not the role of the spatial plan to specifically address those because that's part of the PT Futures program? Is that?
Well, I think that's what the officers are telling us.
But I
it's
think we can
under-
go
and
even
it's,
further than
and
that.
it's in control. But what Victoria is saying is that we should be really encouraging real prioritisation about those connectiveness for
Is it
young
at least
people.
saying that we hear them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So-
rather than using the double negative that you've just used, it's about recognising the limitations of what we can and can't do. But nonetheless, encouraging some prioritisation because this was a really clear message to us.
Yes.
Yeah, the thing that came out of that too was as well, we were looking at starting in the centre and slowly going out. Should it be starting out there and coming in?
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're just a subsection, although a big subsection of the people who don't or can't drive or use a private car or don't have the means to use a taxi or other service. Yeah.
Demographics out, both your districts, high youth and high age people as well. It's quite a
Definitely
youth.
high number of youth.
Yeah.
And I've got a Toyota Surf. It costs a fortune. It's a 6-cylinder petrol.
Yes.
I take my partner's car when I come into Christchurch.
Yes.
Or borrow it. So take.
With permission.
It's a 6-speed manual.
Yes.
But petrol is going to keep going up.
Yep.
What are these kids going to do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder, just overarching, it's that you're supporting the direction, but absolutely encouraging, because it wasn't just the youth, you're quite right, there were quite a few other submitters who talked about that need to be able to connect. That I guess it just be that encouragement from the panel to progress PT Futures and consider all of those options as soon as they're able to, I guess.
Yeah.
And also considering one of the things, areas we're looking, climate change is one of the ones. I mean,
Yeah.
public transport is a big one to get towards that. And this, particularly Greater Christchurch area. I mean, that's what we're adding to the plan as well.
But Robbie's point's so true. We're not going to be seeing cheaper petrol. We're going to be seeing more expensive petrol, whether it's used as because it's needed or just because it's a means of changing people's behaviour. Because it gets to a point that you just can't afford it.
The other thing about this connection of Rangiora and Rolleston Hornby issue is the corridor, Johns Road, Rusty Road corridor. That hasn't really been mentioned under PT or this spatial plan. And I think if we are suggesting that we need to look at the heavy rail facility, that we also similarly need to look at the connection, a faster connection between Rolleston and Kaiapoi as an on-road facility as well. So there's a couple of options looked at, which
that brings the airport into the equation,
which might service the airport a bit more.
Do we have submissions much on that?
Some
No,
of the
not-
youth did some.
The youth talked about it, didn't they?
Youth talked about like what I described as that northern arch, so
Yes.
connecting up across from Rangiora
Yes.
to
Yes.
by the airport and then going up
Going
and
in.
down to UC
You
and
see.
Ara,
Yeah.
picking up the orbiter.
Yes.
So there certainly was that
Yeah.
point made that they felt that was missing in
So
the.
could we capture that thought just in our little recommendation box?
Yeah, just to further explore the north-south connection between Hornby and Rangiora Kaiapoi using Johns Road. Sorry.
It's the ring road.
Using Johns Road and Russley Road via the airport.
That's very, very specific though, isn't it?
Well, it has been talked about before as a missing link kind of thing. But
Just
it's
need
just
to
slightly
type
to
on Hornby fix too.
I think
Thanks.
as that ring road was designed to speed things up, but the volume of traffic on the ring road, it's not speeding anything up.
no. There is a huge amount of traffic that comes from the north in the morning, especially, and they split off.
Yeah, I know.
And there seems to be almost more people going toward the airport, Rolleston, Industrial Park, all that sort of area. And
Well, there was that. I mean, I was quite surprised how big the number was of people who just worked at the airport. And
9,000.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not
Huge.
surprising.
so apart from that, I just wondered if we should also include in this one what we were talking about before, and consideration of future heavy rail passenger service to improve connections. That's on this particular one too.
Cross reference here.
But yeah,
I think you're right. Thank you, panel. I think we've captured the essence of what we want to report through on this. And we're happy. I'm happy enough to focus this sidebar recommendation around that north-south connection, because that definitely came up in our youth discussion, and it seems like it's a real thing. Although the transport planners and the councils will know all about it, but thinking ahead spatially and strategically, it seems to be a important thing. All right, so we'll talk about regional rail connections now. This is Christchurch to Ashburton, connections to Rangiora, Rolleston.
Can we say we can reference that we know that the Regional Transport Committee is looking at and encourage that
Yes.
they continue to do that.
Yes,
work,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
yes, and we've got that nice summary from the officers in their Q&A on that. All right, that's all good. Yep. Walking, cycling, micro mobility.
Is this where we talked about the first and last mile?
Mm.
And getting this accessible word in here was pretty important.
And also being able to take things on to the MRT or take
Yeah.
scooters or bikes or
Yeah.
That's probably a level of detail which we asked questions of that for a lot of the people, and that was a key thing.
Yeah. Tracy, I seem to recall that the early work around the business case of the MRT was not anticipating being able to take your bike on the MRT.
Because at the moment it's reasonably mode agnostic. I think they did talk about that there was, that might be one of the limiting factors or one of the things that have to take into consideration when they do the detailed business case. But certainly, again, you could say that you'd like that to be thought about.
Yeah, so given the amount of times that it came up for our submitters, I think a strong direction or suggestion from us for that to be properly considered, I think would be
Yeah.
useful. Because, yeah, I think the first mile and the last mile are big issues for people.
And we had a young man who biked everywhere, but he was keen to be able to remember him, talk to us.
Yeah.
You know, with young women as well. I think they came in their bike shorts. One of them did. MRT
I can't distinguish
providing,
anymore. We get lots of them.
opportunities for bikes and scooters, etc., to be carried on MRT, public transport.
And if they
That's the
couldn't,
message, isn't it?
yeah, and if they couldn't, a lot of them sort of said if there was
Or
somewhere
safe-
that they can
yeah, safe
safely
park,
Or store.
park, yeah.
safe storage.
Yeah. It seems like it is right down in the detail, but I'm just mindful that it was something that was mentioned many times.
I think I know the partnership would appreciate us reporting back on these things that aren't changed. Spatial plan that we heard loud and clear, that we, because we're working for them, reporting back.
Yeah.
I think it's really helpful as all the partners are considering the transport aspects and the long-term plan aspects to have that richer detail.
Okay, transporting freight.
So adding the freight routes plus in addition the updated recommendation to show the alternate freight routes.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. It's reminded me about something else. Tracy, what time frame is the mapping on? Is that being done this week?
I believe so, but I can quickly text Ben and find out.
Yeah, I'm wondering whether, well, there's little things that we talked about, like map 15, the tiny little mouse scratching showing the new port, the key port transport routes. There's some functional, fundamental things I think I'd quite be keen to sit down with Liz and the team and just make sure we get the maps looking as sharp as we can. Although I know it's always difficult to do that because these people that do these maps are really busy. We could perhaps do that on Thursday, just for half an hour. Go through the maps and see where they're up to. I'm down with Liz. Okay, it's just a sidebar.
I'm just wondering if we followed through on this idea of securing a double tracking corridor. Should that be something that we ask for consideration of
Yes.
planning for a double tracking of the system, pretty
Yes.
much.
And there's parts of it that could, I'm thinking, allow that there might well be parts of it there will be that are easier than others.
Yeah.
So you can't just say, you shouldn't just say just because overall it's going to be difficult. There might not be areas that might be easier.
Because sidings and passing sections, you can, put them in where it's easy. Yeah.
We're all nostalgic with our railway lines, aren't we? We're also seeing where they've worked, and we've had evidence, submissions from people saying it's at that point between 300,000 and 500,000 that cities overseas have done the big change and put in for rail connections and tram connections.
I think that's was kind of what was the frustrating thing of listening to what some of them were saying, and then you hear, I didn't realise that what those population figures were, what they were looking at. So
Cities that are 1 million now
Yeah,
Did make a
we're sitting
move.
in a even smaller amount from the sounds of it.
Yeah.
And I go back to growing up in Auckland and totally missed opportunity of what they
Okay.
have done up there.
Okay.
So, and I'd say they're regretting it now, but
Yes, let's capture those thoughts here. So let's say evidence or no submissions received regarding a number of overseas cities that moved to MRT rails systems when at the 300 to 500,000 population level and are now double that size. And yeah, so that whole thing, we heard quite a lot of, like at least 2 or 3, they told us the cities in Scandinavia and Germany and Copenhagen.
France. Yeah.
Peter would like to highlight the force of those submissions, recognising that growing cities do need to protect strategic transport routes and particularly given the spatial plan is planning for growth levels of 700 and 1 million residents.
Interestingly, we've had some recent articles again in press and stuff about the increased growth, the people that are moving here, not just from internationally, but within domestically. It's been in the last week, isn't it?
Yeah, it was. I can't remember the figure now.
I can't remember the figure, but it was enough to take note to go, wow. Yeah,
But
the growth, there's no doubt about it.
New Zealand's grown with 5.3 million, 140,000 people grow in the last year. 30,000 of that was through new births versus deaths, and the rest is immigration. And
I think it's just giving weight to some of the predictions around the growth, despite the naysayers who questioned the growth statistics.
I think we need to be realistic as well. If you talk to people from other regions, it's the Christchurch moving along and things starting to grow. People were starting to talk about it. It'll be good to come and live in Christchurch.
Upward
it's
spiral.
the thing.
Yeah.
And you look at the quality of the rebuild of the central city and and just your beautiful spring-fed rivers. I can see people are really looking at Christchurch as a serious place to live.
So I think we've got the opportunity here to tie that into these comments around this. Now is that time.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
because it's undeniable that it's growing.
Yeah. So I think maybe just put a note for us, Liz, to think maybe another little sentence. Note that these are really probably anecdotal issues around Christchurch, Greater Christchurch being a more attractive.
Well, actually, I think it's more than anecdotal. I think there's now research and evidence out there.
Okay. So, Greater Christchurch likely to grow given rebuild and general attractiveness of
Yeah, quality.
And Tracy, correct me if I'm wrong, but I
Attractive as an
think
amenity of the area.
the growth statistics were quite conservative, weren't they?
In terms of the plan, well, they've followed that housing business assessment and heard from the two economists that talk through that, which you've got coming up. But I guess the message you're giving here is that comfortable that the plan is growth oriented and that's appropriate.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll work on this. Grant, is there anything else?
Do you
to
still
add?
want to add the bit about securing sufficient capacity on the existing loans for growth?
Oh, yes.
Double tracking or whatever.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's a
Let
new
it go.
thought, so.
Yeah.
Opportunity, so just here's some words, let's make some use. Opportunity is now to investigate and secure double tracking opportunities, double tracking
In operational facilities, maybe.
projects in operational facilities, thinking ahead to a doubling of potential doubling of population in Greater Christchurch.
Is it, sorry, can I just ask, there's the opportunity to investigate or to not preclude? Because
Right.
that again, spatially, you're trying to protect the
And not preclude,
opportunity
yes.
rather than directing the work of other.
Yes.
Excuse me, I'm gonna have to nip out.
Okay with that? Okay. How many of these have we got to go? Are we halfway through or?
I think you're probably a bit more than halfway.
That's encouraging.
I think the next section is quite lengthy, but it's a variation on a theme. So it's to do with, so I guess you've dealt with all the submissions that are more directly about the opportunities
Yes.
and directions. And I think you're now getting into submissions that are about broader topics. So this is about development capacity. So these are getting into the submissions about housing development capacity.
Yes.
The discussion around the NPS, housing demand, the basis for the process that was followed to prepare the housing capacity assessment. Submitters considering the demand was underestimated, response to that. The discussion that you had quite a long chat with Rodney Yeoman about the detached and attached housings and the trends. General view that from officers that it's conservative in terms of demand, and the recommendation is not making changes to the plan, but they have made separate recommendations to the partnership around collaborating with the development sector.
So that should be our recommendation, not the officers, shouldn't it?
You could adopt and endorse it, or whatever the word is.
Yes. So see that last point. Furthermore, we encourage a partnership to explore improvements to the HCA beyond statutory requirements.
Sorry, what was that? The panel
Endorses
yeah.
the recommendations above. If we do, I should have talked to Rodney about why is a partnership using conservative growth, population growth figures?
Yeah.
What's the value in doing that?
Safer.
Just because it doesn't come back and bite you, or he said about 10 times in his memo to us, it was all conservative.
I took conservative to mean actually
Yeah, the opposite of what,
the opposite of what you're thinking. He means conservative as in we're saying
There's lots more.
best case, not correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
That was
okay.
my understanding.
Yes.
Is that
Yeah,
yours,
same.
Liz?
yes.
So they've actually,
so for example, they've
I've been
taken it,
generous,
yeah,
not conservative.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I understood as well.
you read his report, I think he's comfortable that there's actually a significant margin.
There's a margin, right? Yes,
Mm.
that's right, you're right.
Yeah.
One of the interesting things I found from Rodney's was his assessment of an increasing trend
Yes.
towards intensification, which was counter to a lot of the submissions.
Yes, that's why it's so important that we ask that question and ask for some expert advice. So I think in this panel recommendation, we should reference the whatever they're called, principal limits.
Formative limited.
I think principal were the ones that acted. Formative were the one
But the
person who did the peer review.
No,
No,
So-
other way around.
well, it depends. So Insight were the ones that did the peer review from the submitters. And then
Insight,
formative is Rodney Yeoman who spoke to you.
Okay, fine, okay, we'll just get that right. Reference additional information from both of them. And the key
Insight, INSITE. Is it?
I don't think that one is.
Oh,
You're thinking of the other Insight.
right.
Anyway, we can check that.
Okay.
insight informative regarding the clear trend of attached housing growing over the last 5 years. Do you have something else,
Oh,
Tracy?
sorry,
Just 12 months he's got.
Sorry to went just noting that Stephen, you'd asked
No, wasn't 12
Rodney
months.
then just to clarify that wording on table 2 to
Yeah.
explain the
Yes.
different methodology.
Yes,
So
yes,
that could be noted in there.
yes, we should. There's a bit of
I think
information we are waiting for. So Tracy, you and I will have a catch up with Ben as we do weekly to check on where that's up to. And we should include Liz on that. Where
it was quite clear about the actual growth and the period of time. It's just,
Increase since 2021.
yeah,
Uh,
the last
when
3
30
years he was talking
yeah,
about.
it's
I
page
think.
3 of his report.
Yeah,
Sorry, Liz, I might have put you.
Is that right? 2 to 3 years, 2021?
Yeah, well, there's an increase in building 58% increase. So an increase in dwelling data over the last 12 months. That 58% of new dwelling consents were attached. And this is an increase from 2021 when 35% of new dwellings were attached and the post-quake rate of less than 20%.
this is this clear trend.
yeah.
And he's suggesting that it could exceed 61%. That was his big figure in the coming decade.
Yeah.
Anything else here? Otherwise, we'll move on. Okay. Assessing HDC, allied topic.
So this is the same sort of thing. So the previous bit was about demand,
Mm.
and then this is about capacity.
Hmm.
So the sufficiency of the capacity. Questions about the modelling again.
Just, can I just clarify that, as you said before, Liz, he actually said they've probably slightly been conservative about their assessment about housing capacity rather than.
That was my understanding. wasn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So same recommendation really.
Mm.
But there'll be even more with plan change 14, or is that a step bridge too far to say?
I don't know.
Well, yeah, it does increase capacity or theoretical capacity.
Well, the MDRS does, doesn't it?
MDRS, yes.
Mm.
It was considered, there was commentary on it.
Mm.
Mm.
That might then increase even more the amount that's available.
Mm.
Is that something we need to double check on?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm
Did-
asking you, Tracy.
Oh God, I'll have to get the reports back out. We can certainly have a read of them. It could just be a note, just to.
Just a
confirm
note,
Yeah.
check whether
Yeah.
figures
that it's
included
MDRS.
Yeah.
MDRS.
So is it, I just record general agreement
Yes.
and that check whether includes impact of MDRS as if it doesn't, then even greater capacity
Yep.
is provided. Yep.
Yep.
Cool.
Okay, the next one's about level of sufficiency.
Sorry, I think the answer to that question might actually be here. I'm just going to check. Is it gone?
There we go, medium
In the
density.
HCA, Christchurch City was found to have plan enabled capacity. The enablement achieved through the IPI has added significantly to capacity.
Mm.
But are they in the numbers in the?
So I think, if I've read this correctly, the HCA was before that. So the 94,000
Mm.
before that. Then you've had the IPI that's added significant capacity, and that was confirmed in a further assessment that was done through PC 14.
But
And also there's that point that I think Rodney made as well, that also doesn't address the additional residential that might be provided through intensification of commercial areas.
Yeah.
yes. But back to the question of the numbers we have in the spatial plan on capacity, very conservative then.
Mm. Yeah.
And do we want to make any changes to? Can't really, because we're not the experts, but it's a question. We're in a time and motion study with this. It will be recommended 8th December. We'll go through council's first part of next year. There's likely to be final plan change 14 required?
I
There's
believe
There's
hearings
a timetable?
go into first quarter next year for plan change 14.
Yes.
For January, February, so I'm not sure. And then
Yeah.
they've got quite a long time before decisions made.
They're on a hard timeline. I know we had to get the hot ones out by August last year, so they'll be on a timeline from MFE.
I
we
believe
know
the
about
whole
that?
process.
MFE has been, MFE and ourselves have been, the regulatory part of HUD are aware of the timeframes and reasonably comfortable with them.
Okay.
Not everybody's on track,
No,
so, but yeah.
all I'm saying here is we just have to maybe make some observation in the report without doing anything with the numbers. That's all we can do.
Yeah.
Okay. And recognising that Tracy's going to be doing exactly the same thing in 3 years' time with a review.
I mean, they are a moment in time.
They are,
and they're always incorrect.
Is that right? Yeah.
Okay. That right?
Yeah, that's good. We can work on that.
All right. Level of sufficiency. Same sort of thing. So submissions that think that sufficient capacity isn't provided.
Okay. And the officers are saying it's not right. Given the model is conservative and likely underestimates future density, there's likely sufficient kind of long-term technical shortfall. Okay.
So it's the same recommendation.
Same as above, yes. Panel?
Agree.
And I think that the bit about working more closely with developers would be picked up in that housing action plan process, I believe.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, because it specifically lists developer sector in the list of supporting agencies too. Do you want me to just note that, Grant?
Yeah, I think it would be important so that because they're going to play a big part in changing their current established way of providing housing. Well, they'll have to, or they'll go bust. But
it is so important. Like I know from working with developers on the other side, they're the ones that take the risks, they're the ones that put the money up. It's critical. Yeah.
And joint public-private partnership. I know in my experience in London, that's how it worked. The public purse paid for infrastructure and open space. The connections provided the spaces for development, and then it all happens.
Okay.
I think our model in New Zealand is that the private sector pays for all that as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so business development capacity. So again, just talking about that being informed by the capacity assessment.
Yeah, at least, which comes from
At least, yeah.
the RPS.
Yeah, that's the only recommendation. Okay, happy with that?
Yes, we are, I think. Yes.
Okay. Yes, the assessment. So these are submitters that were concerned about, I suppose, the locations of areas identified and officers noting that the specifics of how you address those will be dealt with.
Through the plans.
Yeah.
Okay. So we should note.
It's one of the locations of submissions.
So Nicole, step back in this whatever section we're in. We just go up and the business capacity area because of a declared conflict.
So
Staff are saying,
same queries around the demand and capacity.
yes,
Same response. So opportunity for supermarkets. So essentially saying we don't think there's a need to specifically address provisions for supermarkets.
yes,
It's at that high level. Additional areas requested for capacity, so shown there. Sufficient capacity already being provided. Sorry, there is a shortfall, and that's responded to with the additional areas.
okay, yes. Which of those purple areas?
Yeah.
On the plans.
Plus the additional enablement in PC14. Consider that the demand and capacity are reasonable. Satisfied that it's sufficiently robust to guide the spatial plan.
I'd like to put in the recommendations that the panel specifically asked for further advice and assessment of these matters in the questions and answers process. And those were, the new information was provided in the reply. We note that the officers have maintained their recommendations after considering the submissions, or after considering all the presentations and with further advice from economists. And on that basis, I think we do need to agree with the council recommendations here, the staff. We're satisfied that we've been through the right process. Happy with that?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
So this is to do with monitoring.
Oh. There's an addition on page 87 regarding monitoring in the implementation section. So that's just setting out the requirements of the MPSUD and need to undertake monitoring and need to also review, or is that another part, the review every 3 years? I'm looking at page 87 of our, and there's 2 additions, but this recommendation only deals with the first one. Okay, so I think we need to agree with that because that's the law. So should we say agree in this box? Yes. Thanks.
Cool.
And then there must be another recommendation coming. Oh,
Priority development areas.
right. We had a significant discussion about this back and forth on Thursday morning.
So my understanding of where you got to
Yes.
is that there is an identified issue and that priority area is used in 2 different contexts in the plan. One is a all-encompassing thing that picks up the priority development areas, the Papakainga area, sorry, the Tatility partnership areas, and what we'll call the East. But it's also used, priority area is also used specifically only for the East. And so there's a fundamental confusion because then when priority area is discussed, it's not clear whether it's only talking about the East bit or it's talking about all of them collectively.
Yes, and priority area is defined.
Yeah.
So you explained that very Thursday. So should we go to the recommendations box? So the staff aren't recommending any changes.
So I think this is more, this first one is probably just more to do generally with the priority development areas,
Yes.
how they're used, the way that they can help accelerate intensification and overcome some of the issues. They provide a focus for the urban growth partnership, which allow for investment tools, that they are subject to change, though. Obviously, the spatial plan identifies the intent.
Yes.
There was that submission from Christchurch,
Yeah, Moorhouse.
Christchurch NZ for additional one, and I think there might have been some others. So in response to those, no changes recommended. So you're happy with
I think on that point, yes.
And then I think it's in this identification of Eastern
Yeah, Grant's got a
Christchurch.
question before we carry on.
Just a question, if you scroll up, just there, where it says at the beginning of that paragraph, this area would benefit from further master planning to identify what the key opportunities may be before deciding on priority development area. Is that, should we be intimating that work is done at some point? Or is that under
This
the
was our SMOMO, or what was it? Was it
Oh, it's South
Somo.
Moorhouse, was it?
So
South Moorhouse? Is this the area we're talking about?
House, yeah. Yeah.
Well, it's either that or is it covered under the joint work program? Under the action, is that what you're saying? Under the action?
I'm
How's
not
the
saying
action?
anything. I think that was there's a couple of submitters that were talking about the opportunities there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like, my preference would be to have a specific reference to it. I
So
think it's
our
almost as if
report-
it's something ready to go.
Our report could do what the staff are saying. There needs to be some further work before identifying it as a priority development area, which could happen in the next review of the spatial plan. But we should comment on the opportunities and support that
For this work to be done as a priority.
Yeah.
Because I think that's what you were saying, Kate,
Mm.
at our last meeting, was about the land ownership for the central government within the east,
Yeah.
and that whether it's a priority area or a development priority, that
Yeah.
you need to actually assess the parcels of land
Yeah.
that are less likely to be constrained by natural processes.
Yes.
And how they integrate with transport. So
Yeah.
it's like, it's a bigger picture conceptual planning, I suppose.
Yeah.
Just clarify for people.
Of the south of Morehouse area. As a potential priority development area, the future.
It's so close to the city centre.
Yeah.
It seems a no-brainer.
Okay.
Any comment there?
Just would respectfully note that, and I think it's said several times in the plan, that there will be growth and development happening in all of across the region.
Yes.
They went through the identification was around the complexity and the things that meant you needed a multi-layered approach to it. So I think it's really important to know that obviously each council is still doing its development side of it.
I think the Morehouse Avenue one too is because in the pipeline, Waka Kotahi are currently looking at quite a big scheme for Brown Street.
Yeah.
You know, so there are potentials for just, you know, creating a bit of a barrier between communities to the south and the city. That's integrated planning will help that.
Cranford Street, splitting the community.
I think Tracy's point is quite important, but Tracy, the officers have picked this one out as something that must have been on a short list of PDAs, but didn't make it, or
They've been a really long,
yes.
kind of went to a longer list, and
yes.
and the officers worked through that, and that's absolutely, totally, it's at the direction of the panel. I think because I know, for example, Christchurch City has quite a lot of centre planning that they do. So I can only, I wasn't part of that, so I'm unsure where that sat in that process. But yeah, it's just a general comment that those areas were elevated up as and I think the other key thing is to remember that those priorities will change because that's the nature of the beast. So when it's monitored and reviewed, anything could happen. That means actually this area is now elevated because we've suddenly got a curveball thrown in that needs to be addressed, or there's an opportunity that needs to be addressed.
Eroding or something.
Do you think it's dangerous to be singling this out?
No, it's just, I think it's more the opposite point around expectations. And I think that's the challenge with describing priority areas to the community, because it can feel like if I'm not a priority area, there's nothing happening for me.
Yes.
So I think what you're wanting to emphasise is that it's not a priority area for intensification, which is a different thing, which we've sort of talked about previously in terms of aligning that with the MRT corridor. This is about a priority area for that kind of unlocking investment partnership with government, achieving change at scale. So it's not about saying intensification isn't anticipated in other areas. It's saying what is the focus for that government partnership type stuff.
It's almost urban regeneration. That's what you're talking about, because I had a feeling, apart from the Brown Street thing, that PC14 was looking at more mixed use development in that whole piece, in which case you will get an uplift in that process.
So let's just, we could soften this. They did say we considered including it as part of the Central City PDA, but in our view, this could raise community expectations of this area and others surrounding the centre for greater intervention. Central City growth. So they want more growth in the heart of the centre, perhaps. Maybe a later date. So look, I think we're supporting what they're saying.
Yeah.
So we're supporting their I think it's fine to leave that there as it is
Okay.
and support and,
Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
agree with officers' reasons.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, so now we're into the east.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So this is where we need to capture the
Just go over to you.
So I think the answer is probably, unless anyone has a different view, is probably to call the east something slightly different.
Yep.
Like priority regeneration area or something.
Like it. Yeah.
Someone else suggested that, not me, by the way. Shouldn't take kudos for that. So priority area to describe remains as overarching.
Yeah.
And then I think Stephen and I to untangle the descriptions.
Yeah.
And I think there was another discussion that was had is pull some of the wording from the officer's report about the east
Yes.
Yeah.
into the spatial plan text itself if it's needed.
Yeah. Cool.
Tracy, I'm looking at the second part of that paragraph above, just reading it. Growth is expected and is enabled through the district plan to occur in eastern areas of Christchurch, just as it is across the city. This is not the focus of the draft spatial plan identifying eastern Christchurch as a priority area. So it's not. Then they go on to say, the focus, this is what they are meaning, is on enabling eastern Christchurch to adapt to the impacts of climate change and to strengthen resilience. The area is large and encompasses some of Greater Christchurch's most vulnerable communities in an area subject to several natural hazards. There are benefits in defining an area in the east of Christchurch for investment to be agreed between partners through the joint work program of the draft spatial plan. So that, just reading on the face of it, that's quite a depressing. I can see why people living in the east are thinking, well, it's so hard, but I think we're capturing the fact that this is an area to be worked on with the partnership as a regeneration,
It's a regeneration project.
urban regeneration area, not just forgotten about because it's full of hazards. Is that, I think that's the essence of what we want to, the spatial plan to.
And so what I'm hearing is that regeneration and ensuring that development's happening at the right places and is well connected. And, given the unique, I guess,
it's unique
landscape they're in.
But there's also some really interesting, exciting, valuable assets with the recreation and the environment and everything else there. So in my mind, if the panel was comfortable for us to look at bringing through that flavour of, and I think it is a priority regeneration area. You're looking at the whatever the project is around the old red zone along the areas and biking and walking and wetlands and
Yeah, I think so. I was thinking the other day when we were talking about this that blimey, the potential for that to be quite an
Incredible.
exciting
Yeah.
new living space for
Yes.
people,
Yes.
surrounded by green space and vegetation. You
Yes.
know,
Yeah.
Mm.
yeah,
Mm.
and regeneration does that because it's a broader picture.
Mm.
Yeah. I think
Okay.
also the potential for using PT Futures to strengthen some of the public transport
Mm.
networks out there, both for those recreation, but also for the residents
Mm.
to have good connections back to the city. But I'm also very much aware that both Waka Kotahi and Kangora really want some ability to be certain about the reinvestment potential for their, to go back to their respective boards and say, yeah, these are the areas within Eastern Christchurch which we do want to redevelop this, 60-year-old housing, or or roading that now needs some strong investment in those
Yes.
areas that are going to be, living into the, I've got another 50, 60 years ahead of them as
That's
good
great.
places to live.
Yeah, that's a great thing about the partnership continuing too, because it's around the partnership table that these things can really be looked at. So, I certainly feel that the panel's really thought about this hard, and we've got the right flavour now to come through. You
Can I-
happy with that, Robbie?
Yeah, and one of the sad things is, I might have missed it, but you never went through the Kaiapoi red zone
Yes.
on the bus tour.
Yes.
We took out an earthquake loan. We spent over $9 million creating beautiful park setting, dog park. We've got a major investor wanting to put a entertainment. It's PX, so I've got to be careful what I say, but
Yeah.
entertainment.
Yeah. Well, we don't need to know the details, but
Yeah, and if you look on the south side of the river, we've put 500,000 in the budget for a community hub, and Rata's also putting in 500,000 for a community hub, and that's on the south side. Plus, what we did have start last year was a kids splash pond. It's actually part of the Kaiapoi River. So, Christchurch has got so much. It's just a matter of somebody getting on and getting it done. That's the reality.
it's such a big job. Yeah. Thank you, Robbie.
Yeah, I just wanted to raise the issue about rebuilding on some of the compromised land. And I'm not sure how we reflect that in there, because it's, there were large swathes in the east that was significantly compromised after the earthquake. And there's a number of critics out there saying, people's memories are short, they'll be building back on them again in no time. So I think if we covered it off by saying with development occurring in the right areas, or do we need to actually acknowledge the land that's been compromised? I don't know, I'm just flagging it up there for being devil's advocate.
Can we just tune this message to catch that, Liz, somewhere?
You can put it in brackets after natural hazards, including,
The natural hazards. So after the word hazards,
It was an area of really high
let's just type in
liquefaction.
something like,
Because people talk about the east in terms of the natural hazard with the rising sea level, but
Yes.
let's not forget
Yes.
that it was the liquefaction occurring as a result of the earthquake,
yes.
Yeah.
which has caused significant hazard out in those areas. So we're just going to make sure that we're capturing all of that.
I think it is, with development occurring in the right areas, captures that, Victoria.
Yeah, okay. We do think so.
So I think the issue that was identified by people was that when it talks about it, it talks only about, I suppose, adaptation to climate change and strengthening resilience. And I think that what I'm hearing from the panel is it's capturing some of what the officers were saying about, it's not saying no development is expected. There will be some development, but it has to be in the right places. And then what are the right places, I think, will be determined through that natural hazard work, but also the stuff that's
Sure.
already
Sure,
being
sure.
done. I think as well that I think the red zone is also captured in map 10. So it's as a constraint area.
Ah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm
So
wondering whether
the red zone, you mean?
yeah.
Yeah, so the red zone is shown on map 10, which then translates into map 5 as a key constraint area.
Map 10's the environmental areas and features. Is that one you're looking at?
Yeah. Yes. So in the blue stripe, protected places, landscapes and features,
Yes.
the last notation, special purpose Otakaro Avon River
okay.
Corridor.
Yes.
Just
But I think Victoria's right about short memories. East Valley was wiped out in Hawke's Bay in 1938, and the same scale of just all the houses were washed away. It's sort of 75 years on.
Driving past Abbotsford in South Dunedin, it fell off on the hill, and now it's all covered in houses again and around that area.
Okay,
Short memories.
so are we happy with this, Victoria? Want to beef it up a bit still?
Well, I think you raised the other issue around the work that's happening in the coastal hazards area as well, and there's no cross-referencing, was there? Acknowledging that piece of work. I know we've covered it elsewhere, but do we need to repeat it in here? Because when you're talking about development occurring in the right areas,
Yes.
it just seems a bit
So,
loose.
so this isn't the actual wording to go onto the plan.
No.
This is, yeah.
Okay.
This is our
Okay.
flavour of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Be interested to see what your wording comes back with.
So but this is a good point, because when we put forward some wording, which we'll then meet together on Monday to have a discussion about, that will be the wordsmithing thing.
Thank you.
I think, in terms of saying, we don't think you've got it quite right yet. Can we change this?
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Okay.
Because we're going to have to define what a regeneration area is, aren't we, in our key terms?
Yeah.
Because we've got priority areas in there.
Yeah, so that will be part of untangling that to make sure that where it's used, because I think it might be okay roughly the way it is there, because I think where it's that there is used as that overarching term.
Oh, okay.
I think.
Yes, it is.
So that's part of where we have to untangle it to make sure that that's correct. Yeah.
Because I just have a slight concern too that there might be a number of communities that might think they need to be a regeneration area as well. And we might get a bit of that. And I'm just thinking,
Created another
Middleton,
multi-headed beast.
yeah. So we need to be very clear about what that means.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is responsive to the planning that's already going on in the east, but not recognising its context.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Well, thanks, Liz, for helping us with this. I think the panel's had a good discussion, all in agreement with that direction.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. We'll move on to, again, priority areas. It's what's this next topic? It's a process to come. Is this part of the same?
Yeah, so the joint work program, talking about what that will involve. No changes recommended.
Yeah. But that explanation there seems appropriate and reasonable to me.
Happy?
Yep. Great.
Okay.
Yes.
So these are just, I think the remaining topics are just things that have come out of some of the submissions that didn't fall neatly into the other areas. So strategic infrastructure, submissions seeking protection of additional infrastructure. And this is where we talk about the airport noise contours.
Yes. The Somerset submission.
Not providing for outright protection. Important that it can continue to operate efficiently and effectively. And then I guess acknowledging that it's not protection in all instances, because sometimes you can have development and infrastructure. Just additional things. So the recommendations, identifying the Littleton port, identifying the national grid assets.
Carefully managed distribution.
Carefully managing. Changing the map to key strategic infrastructure.
Yeah.
Amending map 9 to show some other things, I think. So removing the raceways, but showing the military base, the prison, the inland ports.
Yeah.
Yes.
Differentiating between the different types of electricity network.
Yes.
Can I just check in on that, showing military bases?
What the
So
reason for that was?
It's 1, 2, 3, fifth bullet point under map 9.
Yeah. Sorry, what was the question?
Show location of the military bases. Are we just referencing Burnham, or are we talking about that massive Wigram area as well?
Let me just go back to some submissions are concerned that not all of it's shown. New Zealand military bases.
Doesn't Naitahu own Wickram?
Oh, yeah. Nah.
I think there's still a section that's been kept as an emergency
Yeah.
type of thing.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I'd
Yeah.
like to look into that. Can we please? Because we did a
that's my understanding. Is there is a part of the of the
strip,
strip
landing strip.
that's that
Because
still has that.
I
in
went
it.
on a tour recently, and it popped into my mind to say I must check on this in the draft spatial plan, because something must have been said about some emergency,
Yeah, I'm pretty
landing
sure that
facility.
there is.
and I wanted to know about that and whether it was protected. Yeah, there's some type of planes
I'm
that
fairly,
can land
I'm
there
fairly certain there is,
in an
'cause there's a
emergency.
bit that's been kept
Yep.
separate from development.
So I think if you go to page 52 of the recommendation,
Yeah.
it shows the things that they've added. I think.
Got 52, but I'm not sure that I can see it.
Quite little here. I've got a bigger plan.
Can you throw it up on the screen, please,
Yeah.
Kathy? It's map 9.
Please.
If you scroll in, it's got Burnham Military Camp. And I can't see the others.
What's the other one that would end? What would end? The ring you're at. Oh, that's in the
Yes.
field.
No.
Is Burnham the only
Mhm.
military camp in Greater Christchurch?
It's the only one that they've shown on the map. So does that, that's
Yes.
essentially the answer to your question as to what it does include, is currently just the military camp.
Mm.
And it's got Ringura Airfield on it as well, which is the air.
But that's
and then-
not a military.
No, it's not in
No.
military. But I
There's nothing shown in the Wigram area, but I think there is an emergency strip there.
I'd quite like to look into that.
Wigram?
Yeah.
Please.
So just so I'm clear, what is it that what do you want to?
So I'm wanting to understand whether there is
An active airfield, or
yeah.
one that's been left designated still as an airfield.
Emergencies. As a landing strip.
Yeah.
We just capturing that in our notes, so we
because I think the assumption is that if it is, then we should be showing it.
Yes,
Mm.
but there's no dot on the legend about military bases, so we should just follow up on that. Liz,
Yeah, I think.
What
it's-
was that, sorry?
I think it's a designation
there's no
On the, and
nothing
the,
in the legend about
yeah,
military
for a
bases.
reason. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I still think there's room there. You just forgotten.
There's an airfield at West Melton as well, which doesn't look like it's on here.
So is Rangiora airfield noted in the map?
Yeah, up
Yes.
there it is, and that's what's got me thinking about the
West Melton.
yeah.
So is it a private airstrip?
It's a flying club. Don't know many details.
so I think the other thing to remember is that this is the key strategic infrastructure. So it's not intended to capture everything.
Yes.
However, if we're talking about resilient infrastructure networks, then if there is a landing strip that's designated for emergencies, then I would have thought that that was critical.
What's the
strategic.
Rangiora one?
We own it.
So it's a council.
Yep,
And that's got a noise boundary around it.
yep.
So this is why Rangiora is there, because it's got a noise control boundary over it.
Okay.
Yeah, because it then feeds into the constraints. Whereas the other ones I don't think do. I think it's also part of the definition of regionally significant infrastructure in the RPS,
Yes.
whereas I don't think the other ones are. I think it's just Christchurch and Rangiora.
Okay.
We can have a bit more of a look at that though. Oh, I can have a look at that.
Let's have a look at West Melton too on the way past.
When you've only got to think about the earthquake and the way that the land responded with massive cracks. Had we ended up with a crack across our runway, we would have been in a really different position.
Mm.
Yeah.
You were lucky you had the airport serviceable.
Yeah. So I think it's prudent to just check on, see if there is designations around that wigwam, and if there is, then I think it needs to be included.
Yes. So it's not designated and not shown as a key map. We'll let you know. Okay, how are we going, Liz? Are we? coffee
We're
time?
into the airport noise contours.
I think we need a cup of tea before
Cup
we
of tea
dive into
before
that.
that.
To be fair.
Cup of coffee, I think. We'll just stop recording. Thanks.